Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Unraveling Politics, a weekly political analysis show where I look ahead to the future as well as look at the events that happened in the last week. So, if you're new, please be sure to like if you like our weekly podcast, and if you're a regular, please subscribe so you get alerts as to when new episodes are out. We will begin with the war in Iran that appears may be coming to an end very soon. We learned at the end of last week and over the weekend that from the Pakistanis that both sides were close to negotiating a peace deal. It came out on Saturday evening that there would indeed be a peace deal. And what is in this potential peace deal? Well, there were some leaks which the president was furious about. He posted on Truth Social that the terms that Iran leaked out to the fake news have nothing to do with the terms that were agreed to in writing. What they have said, inching their weak, dishonorable people to deal with. And with them, there is no such thing as dealing in good faith. Amazing. Also, their totally rebuffed drone attack last night against Indian ships leaving the Strait of Hormuz is completely unacceptable. They better get their act together and fast. The leaked terms, they were really bad. If the administration had agreed to them, that would have been basically a complete surrender. That's why the administration was so upset. However, we learned that there would be a peace deal, and it was not what the Iranians had suggested. But as of this recording, it is still unclear exactly what is in that deal. It appears there is some common ground, like reopening the Strait of Hormuz within 30 days to pre-war levels and no service fees for the usage of the Strait of Hormuz. However, there are disagreements on nuclear talks, frozen funds, war reparations, which, by the way, are never going to happen. But Iran is demanding $300 billion US. And I think most importantly for Iran, and at least what is most likely not to happen, or least likely to happen, is Israel's war with Hezbollah in Lebanon. The chance of that happening ending is very low, and in fact, the Israelis look like they are starting new strikes in areas like Beirut. So President Trump has repeated, at least said, the deal would be signed on Sunday, which would have been yesterday, but as of this recording, it seems to have not yet been signed. It may still be, of course, by the time you listen to this and this is uploaded. Regardless, I want to look ahead to see what happens at the end of the war. Even if the Strait of Hormuz is open, we are going to see, hear, and feel the effects of this war for a very long time, even though it has lasted about 3 months. Here is a chart from the New York Times about global inventories. Before the war began, we were about middle of the pack in terms of global inventories compared to other years. Now we are near the bottom of what we would normally have at this point in the calendar year. China has huge stockpiles, and it has really not gone down since the war began. So they could sit this out for probably many more months. And it would take years here in America to refill the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And while oil prices are now below $90 a barrel as of this recording, it is still above what it would have been before the war, and it will probably remain elevated for many months to come. And obviously, there are the economic impacts. The World Bank has already projected higher inflation and lower growth. And there's the fact that fertilizer prices are going higher because much of the material for fertilizers come through the Strait of Hormuz. And then there's the fact that this war happened during the spring planting season, and that means less crops were planted, and thus that would mean higher food prices. And I think ultimately we are still a long way away from this being resolved. Even if a deal is signed today, it would only be temporary because negotiations still have to be ongoing. And that's obviously not good news for the business community and for everybody else for that matter. And I say this because there seems to be little incentive to the Iranians to give up. And with Trump and the midterm elections in the coming months, he does not want to look weak on the world stage right before his party goes to the polls. And I get the sense that Iran is also, they do not want to sign a deal. I think they want to continue the war. So I think they will look for any excuse to have the deal collapse, whether it's after the deal or before it's even signed. And then speaking of the international stage, the G7 is going to meet in France, so I would expect Trump to make some noise like he did last year when he left the G7 meeting early from Canada because of the conflict in Iran at the time, which at the time felt like a really big deal, but compared to what happened this year, it was really retrospectively very tiny. And I wouldn't be surprised if Trump finds a way to leave again. And the last thing regarding this is if you are on the political left, the last thing that you should be doing is cheering on our president failing. Yes, he started this war, but we need to win this war. It won't change the outcome of the midterm elections, even if we have a huge victory. That's what I think. But it makes sense. This would make the world a safer place. And I don't think this war started on good terms. And I don't think they went in with a clear plan. But we need to win this, and let's not abandon the president at this time. However, we do need a clear exit strategy, and it seems like we're sort of getting there. The problem for President Trump is that he set a bar awfully high, and if he settles for anything like Obama did in 2015, then this would be rightly seen as a huge waste of time, energy, and lives. And in fact, he said that on Truth Social. He said that Obama's deal was terrible, Barack Hussein Obama, as he calls him, and if he does, he says that he's going to pursue a new deal, and it really doesn't seem like much has been agreed to, if anything. So that is the top news of the week and my analysis. Speaking of the midterm elections, Graham Plattner easily won his primary last Tuesday night as expected. He got about 70% of the vote, which is less than I expected, but it is still a landslide victory over his two opponents, one of which had already left the race. He will face Susan Collins in November, and mark my words, more scandals will come out, and I think Democrats are going to struggle to win the seat. But the national picture favors them, and I wouldn't be surprised if Trump doesn't campaign for Susan Collins, considering Collins voted to convict him in 2021 and prevent him from ever holding office again after the attack on the U.S. Capitol building. So that's that. Economically, inflation has reached a 3-year high and of 4.2% due to the war in Iran. Stripping out food and energy prices, it is at 2.9%. No surprise here, but the largest increase was in gasoline at 40.5%. Airline fares was up 27%, and food prices have also been rising. Fruits and vegetables at 6%, non-alcoholic beverages at 5.8%, and then tobacco products at 7.8%. And the good news is that for the administration that oil prices are down from where they were in the month of May. The bad news is that prices are still way higher than they were a year ago, and when we measure inflation, we measure it on a yearly basis. So I would expect the inflation to continue until the end of the year, at least elevated inflation. And the crazy thing is, if we make it until 2028, which I think we will not get to 2% inflation until at least 2028. It would have meant we would have above target inflation for 7 years, because the inflation crisis began in 2021. So we're looking at, I believe, 7, maybe even 8 years of elevated inflation. And this means higher interest rates, mortgage rates, a dampened job market, and people are going to be very angry. And at this point, I'm becoming increasingly doubtful that this administration will be reelected. Even though Trump is done in 3 years, his administration could carry on through Vance or Rubio, and I would say that is even less likely than it was a few months ago. And as a reminder, President Trump's approval rating is at 38%, and his net approval rating is at minus 20. And on the economy specifically, it is a staggering minus 31. Sticking with elections, but moving across the country to California, we learned early last week that candidates for governor are Javier Becerra and Steve Hilton, Hilton being the Republican and Becerra being the Democratic candidate. California being a safe Democratic state, it will mean that Becerra will see Governor Gavin Newsom in 2027. Tom Steyer was left in third place, and there's no way back for him to beat Hilton. And for me, this is really where the interest in this race ends. We basically know the outcome already. Having a Republican on the ballot is good for Republicans because it encourages the base to come out and vote in down-ballot House races. But it's unlikely to flip any specific district on its own. So yeah. So I really think there's nothing else to talk about there. Becerra will be the next governor of California. We have about 5 months to go until the midterm elections, and there was also some other news here. Speaker Johnson was saying that he has a plan to fix Social Security and Medicare. He won't reveal them, though, until after the midterm elections. So I will kind of talk about the idea behind this and the politics of it. So Social Security is going to run out of cash in a couple of years if changes are not made. The program now gives out more money than it takes in, hence why it's going to go insolvent in 6 years. And by the way, every 2028 presidential candidate is going to need to have a plan to figure this out because this is going to happen under their watch. It's projected to be at the end of 2032. Speaker Johnson supposedly has a plan, but he won't tell us what it is. Well, why? We can assume that he either doesn't have a plan or he doesn't want to tell us what the plan is. Social Security is one of the most popular and bipartisan programs in the country, and if it ran out of money, it would cause universal uproar. So it needs to be dealt with. It's just a matter of time. Speaker Johnson knows his time as Speaker will end at the end of the year. He never actually has to implement any of these plans. He's going to get to cater his base about solving problems and cutting government spending, but he will never actually have to fix them because when Democrats take over, Republicans can say, you are not going to fix this. We would have fixed this if we stayed in office. And that's obviously not true, but that's what they're going to say. And I think the most telling thing is they are in office now. Republicans have complete control of the government. They could begin this process today. They could start reforming Social Security to save money today, but they're not going to because they are afraid of the electoral consequences. And I'll say this right here and now. Changes need to be made to Social Security because if nothing is done, then benefits are going to be cut automatically by 22%. Doing nothing means that people are going to get hundreds of dollars less in their Social Security benefits. People don't seem to understand that even though we are all paying into it, if the program runs out of money, it doesn't mean that we're all going to get nothing. It just means the money coming in will not have to equal the money going out. There's no stockpile. Right now, we have a stockpile of cash, but to cover a shortfall, but that stockpile is getting smaller with each passing month. So first of all, Social Security should be optional. People should be able to opt out of this Ponzi scheme, and they should be able to get their money back. So that is the very first thing. Having it mandatory is completely unfair, and it's a terrible idea. Next, the retirement age needs to be at least 67. Nobody should be retiring at the age of 62 unless you are disabled. And 65 is also too low. People can still work at 65. 67 is a good age. It really should be 70, in my opinion. Then the Social Security cap either needs to be abolished or it needs to be raised significantly. If you don't know, income above $180,000 is not subject to taxes for Social Security purposes. And that needs to go up. It should be at least $240,000. If not, it should be $500,000. These reforms should get the program back in solvency for at least a little while, but politicians don't want to tell voters that they're going to have to take a pay cut. Voters want great programs and great services, but they don't want to pay for them, and that's the chronic problem that we face. So what do I think is going to happen? We are going to go insolvent in 2031, 2032, maybe 2033, with months to go, and the program it's going to be reaching insolvency, and then Congress and the president will act. Because if the president at that time, whether it's J.D. Vance, Gavin Newsom, Marco Rubio, Josh Shapiro, Andy Beshear, whoever, if they do nothing, then they're going to be kicked out of office. And so will everyone in Congress in the 2032 presidential election. Because old people, they love their money, and they're not going to let anyone cut it either on purpose or by accident. So there's that. We do need changes to Social Security because this is a huge problem. And lastly, I want to talk about some international news that will follow up to what we discussed a few weeks ago, and that is the race to replace British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer has been in post for less than 2 years, but it looks like he will be replaced in the coming weeks and months. For context, he was elected in July 2024, and he is now very unpopular. His approval rating is about as low as Liz Truss's was, and she was out of office in less than 2 months. The ruling Labour Party want a new leader. They are very far behind in the polls, but Keir Starmer has not budged. Why? Because one of the star candidates to replace him is Andy Burnham. He's the mayor of Greater Manchester. He has not been elected to Parliament, which is a requirement in order to be the Labour leader, and thus Prime Minister. So the reason I bring this up now is that there will be a special election. They call them by-elections to a seat where Andy Burnham is running, where he's not from the area, but he's from the area, if you know what I mean. He's not exactly from that area, but he's from the region. And the betting odds have a fairly high chance of Burnham winning the by-election, and it looks like he will. If he loses, then all bets are off. But assuming he wins, the by-election's on Thursday. We're going to know the results on Friday. So I would expect a leadership election to be triggered over the weekend or early next week, and it appears that Keir Starmer will contest the leadership election. Assuming he does, this could drag out for quite a bit. If not, and Starmer gives up, then Burnham could become Prime Minister really by the end of the month, maybe the end of next month. It depends how long of a transition they want it to be. Now, I would suggest a longer transition is probably better. Usually, the longer you drag these things out, the better, because it gives you more time to form a policy team, to get the right people, to listen to the public and what they want. But I have a feeling that there's going to be a leadership race with Keir Starmer and maybe somebody else. It's going to be very chaotic and divided, and this could drag out for the rest of the summer. So this would also mean if Burnham becomes Prime Minister, or anybody replaces Keir Starmer, that the UK will have its third Prime Minister during the duration of the show. This show began in May of 2024. Rishi Sunak was still the Prime Minister. There was an election in July 2024. He lost. Keir Starmer came in. Starmer's going to go. Guarantee he's not going to lead Labour into the next general election. So then there will be a third. So this show hasn't even been going on for more than 2.5 years, and we're already on the third Prime Minister. So I'll also say that Andy Burnham is probably going to get along with Trump very badly, worse than Starmer and Trump do these days. So next week, whether Burnham wins the by-election or not, we will chart the path forward. And as I said, I expect a Labour leadership race to come what may, because there are other candidates, but Burnham is the easy favorite. Polling by YouGov, listed below, shows that Burnham would win with 59% and Starmer would lose with 37% if there was a head-to-head race. And all all other potential contenders, Andy Burnham would win easily. And Keir Starmer would lose to every single candidate except Wes Streeting. So I said a few weeks ago, Wes Streeting was somebody who could become prime minister. He is not. There's no way Wes Streeting is going to win. So it really comes down to the election on Thursday, and then we'll have to wait and see. So that is all for now. As always, please let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and hopefully next week we'll have another video podcast. I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Bye-bye.